Honey, just use Mom's card. She's got around $130,000 saved, my son said. Passing my card to his wife without my consent, she headed straight to the mall and packed her cart with gadgets, clothing, and imported perfumes. The cashier rang up the total. $82,000, ran the card, glanced at the screen, and said, "Sorry, but this card is." Can you imagine spending 40 years, your entire life, scrimping, saving every single penny, making countless sacrifices, only to hear your own son, the one you raised alone, casually tell his wife to take your life savings, saying, "She lives here for free anyway"? My heart didn't just break that day, it shattered into a million pieces. Right then, I knew something had to change. What would you do if your own flesh and blood tried to steal everything you ever worked for? I was in the kitchen, flour dusting my hands from making lunch, when those words sliced through the wall like a razor blade and hit me square in the chest. Use Mom's card. She's got like $130,000 saved up. It was Edward's voice. My son. And it felt like the floor was just opening up beneath me. I stood there, frozen, unable to move. My own son, the child I carried for 9 months, the boy I nursed and raised entirely on my own after his father walked out on us, was handing my bank card over to Grace, his wife, as if it were his. As if that $130,000, money that cost me 40 years of my life, of ruined knees from scrubbing other people's floors, of tired, aching eyes from sewing until dawn, belonged to him. The rolling pin clattered onto the counter, unnoticed. My heart hammered so hard against my ribs I could literally hear it thumping in my ears. "Are you sure, sweetie? She won't get mad." That was Grace, her voice dripping with that sickly sweet pretense she used whenever she wanted something. Oh, I knew that voice all too well after 15 years of watching her subtly manipulate my son. Then Edward spoke again, and every single word was like another twist of a knife in my back. "My mom won't say a thing. She lives here for free, eats our food, uses our utilities. It's the least she can do to help us out a little. Besides, she's old now. What does she need all that money saved for? We have expenses. We have a life ahead of us." I stood there, staring at the dough, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes, but I absolutely refused to let them fall. Not anymore. I'd cried enough in this house over the last 20 years. 20 years since Edward had convinced me to sell my own little house to help him with the down payment on this property. The very house he now claimed was entirely his. Free, he'd said. I lived for free in the house I helped buy. I ate for free from the food I cooked every single day. I used for free the utilities I paid for with my $500 monthly pension, which I handed over to them in full every single month, not keeping a single cent for myself. Then I heard Grace's footsteps, the jingle of her purse, the keys. She was heading to the mall, my card in her hand, armed with the pin Edward had just given her, granting her access to every dollar I had ever sweat for. "I'm off to the mall. Josephine, need anything?" She chirped from the living room, that fake kindness coating her voice, as if we were friends. As if she hadn't slowly, piece by piece, stolen my son from me all these years. "No, dear, thank you," I managed to say, my voice as firm as I could make it, without turning around, without letting her see my face. I heard the door click shut, the car engine start, the sound fading away down the street. I sank into a kitchen chair and just looked at my hands. 68-year-old hands, full of wrinkles and age spots. Hands that had worked without rest since I was 14. I remembered every single one of those $130,000. Every bill had a story, a sacrifice, a surrender. The first $10,000? That came from working as a seamstress, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week, making $20 a day, which I kept in an envelope under my mattress. It took me 3 years to save that, eating rice and beans almost daily, never buying even a new pair of shoes. Another $20,000 came from extra cleaning jobs on Sundays, the only day I was supposed to rest. Huge houses belonging to rich families, paying me $50 for 8 hours of backbreaking work. I cleaned 3 houses every Sunday, $150 that I saved completely, not spending a dime. The rest? Years and years of having no life of my own. Not buying clothes, not going to the salon, never eating out. Saying no to everything that cost money. While other women my age traveled with friends or treated themselves, I was counting pennies, putting them into the bank account I'd opened 30 years ago. And for what? To have my own place someday. A small, modest apartment where no one could ever tell me I was living for free. Where I could close my door and be the master of my own space, my own peace, my own life. That was all I wanted. It wasn't much to ask for after 68 years in this world. But now, my son, my own son, had just handed over my card as if it were his, as if I didn't exist, as if my life and my effort were worth absolutely nothing. Edward walked into the kitchen then, phone in hand, not even glancing at me. He poured himself a glass of water, leaning against the fridge. My almost ready lunch was waiting. "Mom, I have a meeting at 3 and I need to eat quick," he said, in that tone he'd started using lately. Not a question, but a command. "Almost," I replied, getting up to finish the dough, even though my legs felt shaky. "Hey, Mom, Grace went to the mall. We needed a few things for the house," he mumbled, still glued to his phone, as if this was the most normal, innocent thing in the world. I didn't answer. I just kept kneading, pressing the dough harder than necessary, feeling the anger and the pain swirling and mixing in my chest. "Did you hear what I said?" Edward asked, finally looking up. "Yes, I heard," I said, without turning. "And any problem?" His voice held irritation now, as if I were the one doing something wrong. I turned and looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that used to look at me with such love, with respect, with admiration. Now, all I saw was impatience and annoyance. "Should I have a problem?" I asked, my voice calm, even though inside I was a volcano about to erupt. "No, of course not. It's just some things for the house. Besides, Mom, you live here. It's normal for you to help with expenses from time to time," he said, dismissing me, already turning back to his phone as if the conversation was over. "Help with expenses?" He said that as if I didn't give him my entire pension every single month. As if I didn't cook, clean, wash, and iron for the whole family without ever being paid $1. As if I hadn't dedicated the last 20 years of my life to serving them. "I understand, Mom," was all I said and returned to my dough. Edward left the kitchen. I stood there, looking out the window at the small garden I tended myself, the roses I planted, the grass I watered every morning, the tomatoes growing in the corner. All in a house my son claimed was his alone. In that moment, a decision solidified in my mind. A fierce, unwavering decision. I was not going to stand by and watch them steal the only thing I had left. I was not going to let Grace spend in one day what took me 40 years to save. And I was definitely not going to continue living in a house where I was treated like a maid and not a mother. I finished preparing lunch, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked straight to my room. I locked the door, pulled out my old phone, and dialed the bank's number, which I knew by heart. I waited through the rings, my heart racing like a hummingbird's. "National Bank. Good morning. This is Linda. How can I help you?" A friendly voice answered. "Good morning. I need to block my debit card immediately," I said, my voice surprisingly firm. "Can you confirm your full name and account number, please?" the operator asked professionally. I gave her all my information, answered the security questions, confirmed my date of birth and address. Every second that passed, my heartbeat quickened, as if I were committing a crime, when in reality, I was just protecting what was mine. "I understand, Mrs. Josephine. Was there a problem with the card? Did you lose it or was it stolen?" the operator asked. "Let's just say someone has it without my authorization," I replied, choosing my words very carefully. "Perfect. I am now blocking the card immediately. From this moment on, no one will be able to make any transactions with it. Would you like us to send a new card to your home address?" Linda from the bank explained. "Yes, please, but don't send it to this address. I'll pick it up in person at the branch next week," I said, thinking fast. I didn't want Edward or Grace to intercept my new card. "No problem, Mrs. Josephine. Your card was blocked at 11:02 in the morning. Is there anything else I can help you with?" the operator asked. "No, that's everything. Thank you very much," I said, and hung up the phone with trembling hands. I sat on the edge of my bed, The twin bed Edward had given me when I moved into this house, telling me the room was too small for anything larger. I looked around my tiny room, 10 feet by 10 feet, a bed, a small closet, a nightstand. This was my entire space in a 4-bedroom house. Grace had a full walk-in closet for herself, bigger than my entire room. Edward had his private office where no one was allowed. There was a TV room, a formal dining room they only used for guests. And I lived in the smallest room, the one that was originally the pantry. But I hadn't complained. I never complained. Because he was my son. Because I loved him. Because I thought that one day he would see me as his mother again, and not just as a burden. How incredibly naive I had been. I heard Edward's phone ring in the living room. His voice answering. Then silence. Then his voice got louder, more agitated. What do you mean it's blocked? That's impossible. My mom never blocks anything. She doesn't even know how to use those bank things. Edward said, and I could hear the frustration rising in his tone. I stayed still, holding my breath, listening. Grace, wait, let me call my mom. Seconds later, he was knocking on my door. Mom, are you in there? I need to talk to you urgently. Coming, I said, waiting a few more seconds before opening it, pretending I'd been busy. I opened the door, and there he was, phone in hand, that anxious expression on his face that only appeared when things weren't going his way. Mom, Grace just called me from the mall. She says your card isn't working, that it's showing as blocked. Did you block it? He asked directly, no beating around the bush. I looked him in the eyes, and for the first time in 20 years, I wasn't afraid to tell him the truth. Yes, I blocked it, I replied calmly. What? Why would you do that? Grace is at the checkout with a cart full of things. She's being completely embarrassed. Edward said, raising his voice. I didn't give her permission to use my card. That money is mine, I said, maintaining my composure. Mom, don't start with that now. Grace was just going to buy a few things we need for the house. It's not a big deal. Call the bank and unblock the card right now, Edward ordered, that authoritarian tone he had developed over the years fully present. No, I said simply. Edward fell silent, staring at me as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. It was probably the first time in 2 decades that I had said no to him. What do you mean no, Mom? You're not understanding. Grace is waiting at the mall with $82,000 worth of purchases. Do you have any idea how embarrassed she is right now? Edward said, his face now bright red with anger. $82,000. I repeated slowly, feeling the words burn in my throat. Edward, she was going to spend $82,000 of my money without even asking me. It's for the house, Mom. A new TV, a living room set, appliances that we need to replace. It's not like it's just for her, Edward explained, as if that justified everything. I did not authorize those expenses. I saved that money working for 40 years. It's not family money. It's my money, I said with a firm voice, though I was shaking inside. Mom, you live in this house. You use the electricity, the water, the gas, the internet. All of that costs money. Or do you think it's free? It's only fair that you contribute, Edward said, crossing his arms, looking completely self-righteous. I give you my entire pension every month, $500 that you never give back. I cook, I clean, I wash, I iron. Isn't that contributing? I asked, feeling my voice break. But I stood my ground. That $500 doesn't even cover your food expenses, Mom. You're being selfish. You have $130,000 saved up that you're not using for anything. What do you want it for? What are you going to do with it at your age? Edward said. Those words, they hurt me more than any physical blow. At my age, as if at 68, I no longer deserve to have dreams, plans, dignity. That money is to buy my own apartment and stop being a burden to you, I said, and I saw Edward's eyes widen in genuine surprise. What are you talking about? Nobody said you're a burden, Edward replied, but his voice didn't sound convincing. You just said it 5 minutes ago in the living room. You told Grace I lived here for free, that I ate her food, that I used her utilities, that I was old and didn't need that much money, I said. I saw Edward's face go pale as he realized I had heard everything. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Edward opened his mouth several times, as if trying to find words, but nothing came out. Mom, I didn't mean it like that, he finally managed, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. But you said it. And you thought it. And right now you're more worried about Grace's embarrassment at the mall than the fact that she tried to spend $82,000 of my dollars without my permission, I said, feeling the tears welling up again, but I held them back. She's my wife, Mom. It's normal for me to defend her, Edward shot back. And I'm your mother. Isn't it normal for you to defend me? I asked. The question hung in the air between us like a ghost, heavy with unsaid pain. Edward fell silent again. He looked at his phone, then at me, then back at his phone. I could see the conflict on his face, a battle between his conscience and his loyalty to Grace. Mom, please, just unblock the card for today. Grace is already there. She's already picked everything out. We can't leave her looking like a fool. We can talk about this calmly later, Edward said in a softer tone, trying to manipulate me with guilt now. No, Edward. And tell Grace to come home. The three of us need to talk, I said, with a firmness I didn't know I possessed. Mom, don't make this bigger than it is, please, Edward pleaded. I didn't do anything. You're the ones who took my card without permission. You're the ones who were planning to spend my money as if it were yours. I'm just protecting what belongs to me, I said, and took a step back, closing my bedroom door softly in his face. Edward stood in front of my closed door. I heard him knock gently, a hesitant rap with his knuckles. Mom, open up, please. Don't be mad, he said in that voice he used when he was a little boy and did something wrong. The voice that used to melt my heart, but now, it just made me angry. I didn't answer. I sat on my bed and waited. I heard his footsteps walking away. I heard him talking on the phone with Grace in a low voice. I heard him explaining that I had blocked the card. And then I heard Grace's screams from the other end of the phone, so loud they pierced through the receiver. Your mother is crazy. I'm standing here like an idiot in front of all these people. The cashier already called the manager. This is humiliating, Grace shrieked. And I didn't feel a single ounce of guilt. Let her feel embarrassed. Let her feel what it's like when someone makes you look bad. I had felt embarrassed for 20 years. Every time I was introduced as the mom who lives with us at family gatherings. Every time Grace told her friends that I helped around the house as if I were the maid. Half an hour passed before I heard Grace's car pull up. The door slammed open so hard it shook the walls. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, the sound that always announced a storm. Where's your mother? Grace demanded, her voice dripping with venom. Grace, calm down. Let's talk about this calmly, Edward said, trying to appease her. Calmly? Calmly? Your mother put me through the biggest embarrassment of my life. There were like 20 people watching while the cashier tried to run the card over and over. I had to leave everything there and run out. Grace screamed, and I could picture her perfectly, face red, hands waving wildly in the air. I know, honey. I know. But she heard what we talked about this morning. She's upset, Edward tried to explain. So what if she heard? We told the truth. She lives here without paying for anything. The least she can do is help us when we need it. It's not fair that she has $130,000 saved up while we're killing ourselves working and paying all the bills for this house, Grace said. And every word confirmed what I already knew. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a source of money. I got up from the bed and opened my bedroom door. I walked towards the living room where they both stood. Grace looked at me with those furious eyes, still clutching empty shopping bags. Josephine, we need to talk seriously, Grace said, without even a greeting, a hello, or good afternoon. Yes, we need to talk, I replied calmly, and sat in the armchair, the only place they allowed me to sit. The large sofa was Grace's exclusive territory. Why did you block your card? Why did you embarrass me like that? Grace attacked immediately. I didn't embarrass you. You brought it on yourself by trying to spend $82,000 of my money without my permission, I replied, looking her directly in the eye. It's not just your money. This is a family. Family shares. Grace shouted, taking a step towards me. I am not your family, Grace. I am Edward's mother, and my money is mine. I earned it. I saved it, and I decide what to do with it, I said, keeping my tone calm, even though inside I wanted to scream everything I had held back for 15 years. Mom, please don't be like that. Grace just wanted to buy things we really need for the house. The TV in the living room is 8 years old. The couch is all worn out. The refrigerator is making weird noises, Edward intervened, trying to justify the unjustifiable. If you need those things, buy them with your own money. You both work. Edward makes good money as an engineer. Grace works at that clothing store. You have 2 salaries. Why do you need mine? I asked. Because we have expenses, Josephine. This house doesn't maintain itself. The mortgage is $1,200 a month, utilities another $300, food about $500, the internet, phones, car insurance. It all adds up. There's nothing left at the end of the month, Grace explained in that victim tone she knew how to use so well. I give you $500 from my pension every month. That helps, I said. $500 is nothing, Josephine. That barely covers your food, Grace said with contempt. Then let me go. Let me buy my apartment with my money and stop being a burden to you, I said. I saw Grace and Edward exchange a quick glance. A look I couldn't interpret at the time, but later understood perfectly. Mom, don't say that. Nobody wants you to leave. This is your home, Edward said. But his words sounded hollow, rehearsed. This is not my home, Edward. You said it yourself this morning. This is your house. I just live here, I said, feeling my voice finally break. Oh, for God's sake, don't start with the drama, Josephine. Nobody said that. Edward was just talking. Grace intervened, rolling her eyes. He did say it, and he's right. That's why I want to leave. I want my own place where I'm the owner, where I pay my own bills, where nobody makes me feel like I'm a burden, I said. And the tears finally started to roll down my cheeks. Mom, you can't live alone. You're 68 years old. What if you get sick? What if you fall? Who's going to take care of you? Edward said, with that fake concern that angered me more than his insults. I'm 68, not 108. I'm perfectly healthy. I can take care of myself. I did it for 40 years before I came to live here. I replied, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. But it's different now, Mom. You're older now. You need to be with family, Edward insisted. What I need is respect and dignity, and I don't have that here, I said, getting up from the armchair. Look, Josephine, let's be honest, Grace began, crossing her arms. You have nowhere to go. You have no other family. Your friends are in the same boat as you, or worse. You have no one. If you leave here, you'll end up alone in some sad little apartment, eating alone, watching TV alone, dying alone. Is that what you want? Her words were like slaps in the face, each one designed to destroy what little self-esteem I had left. And the worst part was, she was right about something. I didn't have much family left. My sister had died 5 years ago, my parents decades ago. My few friends were scattered, each with her own life, her own problems. I'd rather be alone and at peace than accompanied and miserable, I replied, and I was surprised by my own bravery. Oh, how dramatic. Nobody's making you miserable, Josephine. We're giving you a roof over your head, food, company. But of course, nothing is ever enough for you, Grace said sarcastically. You don't give me anything. I pay with my pension, with my work in this house, with my dignity. I said, raising my voice for the first time. Your pension doesn't even cover half of what you cost us here. And washing a few dishes and sweeping a little isn't work. Anyone can do that? Grace shouted, completely losing her composure. Then anyone can do it. Hire someone. I'm leaving, I said, and walked towards my room. You're not going anywhere, Mom. Stop being ridiculous. Edward yelled after me. I locked myself in my room and heard the two of them continue arguing outside. Grace blaming Edward for being weak with me. Edward trying to calm her down. Both of them talking about me as if I were a problem to be solved and not a person. I sat on my bed for hours, listening as the house gradually returned to its usual silence. Grace had locked herself in her room, slamming the door. Edward tried knocking on my door 2 more times, but I didn't answer. I had nothing more to say to him at that moment. When night fell and the house was completely silent, I took out my old phone and dialed the only number I knew would comfort me, Linda. My lifelong friend, the only person who truly knew me. Josephine, what happened? It's almost 10 o'clock at night, Linda answered with a worried voice. And then I broke down. I told her everything, from the conversation I overheard in the morning to the fight with Grace. From the $82,000 they tried to spend to the hurtful words about my age and my loneliness. Linda listened without interrupting, letting me cry and vent like I hadn't in years. Josephine, listen to me carefully, Linda said when I finally ran out of words. Tomorrow morning, you're coming to my house. You can stay with me as long as you need while you look for your apartment. You can't stay there anymore. That house is killing your soul. Linda, I can't impose on you like that. You live in a small apartment. There's no space, I said between sobs. I have a sofa bed in the living room that's more comfortable than being in that house where they don't value you. Tomorrow, Josephine, tomorrow you pack what you need and you come here. It's not a suggestion, it's an order, Linda said with that firmness she always had when she knew I needed a push. I barely slept that night. I stared at the ceiling of my small room, remembering how I had ended up in that place 20 years ago. Edward had just married Grace and told me they wanted to buy a bigger house, but couldn't afford the down payment. I had sold my small apartment, that 2-bedroom apartment I had bought with so much effort, and I gave the money to Edward. $50,000 that represented my entire life's work up to that point. It's a loan, Mom. I'll pay you back in 2 years when I get a raise, Edward had promised, his eyes shining with excitement. But 2 years passed, then 5, then 10. And the loan was never mentioned again. When I brought it up, Edward would get annoyed, saying he gave me a roof and food, that it was worth more than the $50,000. Now I understood. I had been a fool. I had trusted my son blindly, and he had abused that trust. Worse, I had allowed it for 2 decades because I was afraid of being alone. Afraid that Edward would reject me, afraid of losing the only direct family I had left. But the fear of loneliness couldn't be stronger than my dignity. I couldn't keep living like this. When Friday morning came, I got up earlier than usual. I prepared breakfast as always, left everything ready on the table. But this time, I didn't stay to serve them. I showered, got dressed in my best clothes, and started packing my things into the 2 old suitcases I had stored at the back of the closet. I didn't have much: modest clothes, a few shoes, photographs, important documents, and the small wooden box where I kept the few pieces of jewelry I owned. My mother's wedding ring, a pair of silver earrings my sister gave me, a thin chain I bought with my first paycheck. Everything fit into 2 suitcases. I heard when Edward and Grace got up. I heard their voices in the dining room, eating the breakfast I had prepared. Neither of them knocked on my door to see how I was. Neither asked if I had slept well. It was as if I didn't exist unless they needed something. I waited for them both to leave for work. Edward left first at 8:30, as always. Grace left at 9. When I heard her car's engine fade away, I took my suitcases out of the room. I walked through the house one last time, looking at every corner I had cleaned thousands of times. The kitchen, where I spent countless hours cooking for a family that barely said thank you. The living room, where I could never sit comfortably because that was Grace's space. The dining room, where I always sat in the corner, in the least comfortable chair. I left the house keys on the dining room table. Next to them, I left a note I had written during the night. Edward, I'm leaving. I can't keep living in a house where my only value is my money. Thank you for these 20 years, but I need to get my dignity back. Don't look for me. When I have my new apartment, I'll send you the address. I love you, but I love myself more. Mom. I called a cab and waited outside with my 2 suitcases. The next-door neighbor, Mr. Ernest, was watering his garden and looked at me curiously. Good morning, Josephine. Going on a trip? He asked kindly. Something like that, Mr. Ernest. Something like that, I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. The cab arrived in 10 minutes. The driver, a young man in his 30s, helped me with the suitcases. Where to, ma'am? He asked. I gave him Linda's address and looked out the window the whole way, watching the streets of the city where I had lived my entire life go by. Every block took me further away from Edward and Grace. And strangely, instead of sadness, I felt something like relief. Linda was waiting for me at the door of her building. When I arrived, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And that hug made me cry again. But this time, they weren't tears of pain, but of gratitude. "You're here. You're safe now," Linda whispered, stroking my hair as if I were a child. Her apartment was small, as she had said. A living dining room, one bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. But it was clean, tidy, and above all, it was filled with peace. There was no tension in the air, no looks of contempt, no hurtful words waiting to attack. "The sofa bed is all yours. It's not much, but it's comfortable, and this house is your house as long as you need to stay," Linda said, showing me where I could put my things. "Linda, I don't know how to thank you for this," I said with a broken voice. "You don't have to thank me for anything. That's what friends are for. Besides, you'll keep me company." "Ever since I became a widow 3 years ago, this house has been too quiet," Linda said with a warm smile. We spent the rest of the morning organizing my things. Linda gave me space in her closet, showed me where everything was in the kitchen, made me feel welcome in 1,000 small ways. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone started ringing. It was Edward. I didn't answer. He called again and again and again. Finally, he left a voicemail. "Mom, where are you? I came home for lunch and you're not here. I saw your note. Please call me. I'm worried." Worried. How interesting that he was worried now. He wasn't worried yesterday when he yelled at me. He wasn't worried when his wife tried to steal $82,000 from me. He wasn't worried for 20 years while I withered away in that house. Linda looked at me with questioning eyes. "Are you going to answer him?" she asked. "Not yet. I need to think clearly first. I need to decide what I'm going to do with my life before I talk to him," I replied, turning off the phone. That afternoon, Linda and I sat on her small balcony with a cup of coffee. From there, you could see the city, the bustling life on the streets below. "You know what hurts the most, Linda?" I said after a long silence. "It's not the money they tried to spend. It's not even that they disrespected me. What hurts the most is that I lost 20 years of my life trying to earn my son's love. And now I realize that love was always conditional on what I could give him." Linda took my hand in hers. Those hands, also wrinkled by the years, but strong and warm. "Josephine, listen to me. You didn't lose 20 years trying to earn his love. You gave 20 years of unconditional love, which is very different. You're not the problem. The problem is that Edward and that woman didn't know how to value what they had," Linda said wisely. "But I'm his mother. Mothers are supposed to sacrifice for their children," I said, still feeling that guilt that had been instilled in me my whole life. Mothers should love their children, yes. But children should also love their mothers. Love isn't a one-way street, Josephine. And sacrifice has a limit. When the sacrifice is killing your soul, it's not love anymore. It's self-destruction," Linda replied firmly. She was right. She always was. Linda had been my friend since we both worked in the same textile factory 40 years ago. She knew me better than anyone. She had seen my marriage fail. Had seen how I raised Edward alone. Had seen how I slowly faded away in that house. "Now you need to think about yourself. About what you want. About what Josephine needs to be happy," Linda continued. "I want my apartment. I want my own place where no one can make me feel like I'm in the way. Where I can have coffee in the morning without feeling like I'm using someone else's electricity. Where I can watch TV without being told I'm taking up the couch," I said. And as I spoke, I felt something inside me grow stronger. "Then that's what we're going to get. Tomorrow morning, we start looking for apartments," Linda said with determination. That night, I slept on Linda's sofa bed, and it was the best night's sleep I'd had in years. There was no tension, no fear of hearing footsteps outside my door. No anxiety, wondering what new form of humiliation awaited me the next day. On Saturday morning, my phone was still off, but I could imagine the number of missed calls I had. I didn't care. For the first time in 2 decades, I was my priority. Linda and I had a quiet breakfast, talking about everything and nothing, laughing about old memories, making plans. Afterwards, we got dressed and went out. We had marked 5 apartments to see that day, all within my budget. The first was too dark, with small windows that barely let in any light. The second was in a rundown building that smelled of damp. The third was perfect, but it was on the 4th floor without an elevator, and my knees weren't what they used to be. The fourth had plumbing issues the owner didn't want to fix. But the fifth stole my heart the moment I walked in. It was a 2nd-floor apartment in a well-maintained and secure building of only 6 floors. It had a living room with a large picture window overlooking a small park, a perfectly equipped open-plan kitchen, a spacious bedroom with a closet, and a clean, functional bathroom. It wasn't big, about 650 square feet, but it was cozy, bright, and had a peaceful energy. "How much are you asking for it?" I asked the man showing it to us. $55,000. It includes a parking space downstairs and a small storage unit in the basement. "The HI fees are $100 a month," explained Mr. Benjamin, the owner. $55,000. I could pay for it in cash and still have $75,000 left to live comfortably, for emergencies, for my final years. "Can I see it again?" I asked, and Mr. Benjamin nodded kindly. I walked through each space, imagining my life there. My bed in the bedroom, my clothes in the closet, my few photographs on the walls. I imagined making coffee in that kitchen, sitting by that window to read, sleeping without being startled awake. I saw my future in those empty walls. And that future was bright. "I'll take it. I want to buy it," I said in a firm voice. Mr. Benjamin smiled broadly. "Excellent decision, ma'am. It's an apartment with very good energy. The previous owner lived here for 20 years. She only moved because she went to live with her daughter abroad. It's well cared for, never had any problems," he explained as he took some papers out of his briefcase. "We need to do the legal paperwork. Do you have a trusted lawyer, or would you prefer I recommend one?" Mr. Benjamin asked. "I know a good one," Linda intervened. "My cousin's son is a lawyer. He's honest and charges a fair price." "Perfect. Then we can meet on Monday to start the paperwork." "It usually takes a week to complete the whole legal process," Mr. Benjamin said. 1 week. In 1 week, that apartment would be mine. My name would be on the deed. I would be a homeowner, not a burden living for free in someone else's house. We left the apartment with a signed agreement and a $5,000 down payment that I paid by check. Linda and I hugged on the street like 2 excited little girls. "You did it, Josephine. You're going to have your own place," Linda shouted, not caring who heard us. "I did it," I repeated, feeling a huge smile spread across my face. I really did it. We returned to Linda's apartment, euphoric, making decorating plans, talking about what furniture I would need to buy, what things I could get secondhand to save money. It was then, in the midst of that happiness, that I decided to turn on my phone. I had 32 missed calls from Edward, 17 from Grace, and over 40 text messages. The messages started out worried. "Mom, where are you? Please answer. We're frantic." But then the tone changed. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Stop the drama. We need to talk about important things." And the last ones were outright threatening. "If you don't answer, I'm going to the police. This is abuse towards us. You're going to have to come back. You have nowhere to go." Linda read the messages over my shoulder and snorted with indignation. "That boy has lost his mind. Abuse towards them? He says, as if they haven't been abusing you for years," Linda said, shaking her head. "I have to talk to him, but by text." "I don't want to hear his voice yet," I said, taking a deep breath. I sat on the sofa and wrote a long message, choosing each word carefully. "Edward, I'm fine. I'm in a safe place with a friend." I needed to get out of that house to recover my mental health. For 20 years, I lived feeling like a burden. And yesterday's incident was the last straw. I bought my own apartment. I'm moving in a week. This isn't a punishment for you. It's a decision of self-love for me. When I'm settled, I'll give you my address and we can talk calmly. I love you, but I have to do this. Mom. I pressed send before I could change my mind. I saw the 2 check marks indicating the message was delivered. Then I saw them turn blue, indicating he had read it. The 3 dots appeared, indicating Edward was typing. They disappeared. They appeared again. Disappeared again. Finally, his reply came. "Mom, this is crazy. You can't just buy an apartment like that. Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to help you if you get sick? Have you thought about that? Besides, Grace is very upset. She says you owe her an apology for the embarrassment at the mall. We need you to come home and talk about this like adults. I read the message 3 times. No apology from him. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just more manipulation. More attempts to make me feel guilty. More fake concern disguised as love. Are you going to answer? Linda asked. Yes, I said, and wrote a short but clear reply. Edward, I'm 68 years old, not 98. I can take perfectly good care of myself, and I don't owe Grace any apology. She tried to spend $82,000 of my money without my permission. If anyone should apologize, it's you two. We'll talk when I'm ready. Mom. After sending that message, I turned the phone off again. I didn't want to keep reading his attempts at manipulation. Linda was right when she said I needed space to think clearly, and that was impossible with Edward bombarding me with messages designed to make me feel guilty. Sunday was a day of absolute peace. Linda and I went to church in the morning, something I hadn't been able to do in years because Sundays were when Grace organized her big family breakfasts, and I had to cook for everyone. Afterwards, we walked through the flea market, looking at secondhand furniture and things for the house. I found a small but beautiful dining table made of solid wood for only $80. The seller helped me load it into the taxi. I also bought a set of pots in good condition for $30, some plates and glasses, and towels for the bathroom. Linda insisted on buying me a new set of sheets she saw in a store. So you can start your new life with new, clean sheets with no history, Linda said as she paid. And I couldn't help but cry again, but this time from emotion. We stored everything in the storage unit of Linda's building, waiting for the day I could move into my new apartment. Everything I bought, every object I set aside for my new life, was another step towards my freedom. On Monday morning, I met with the lawyer, Linda's cousin's son. His name was Ferdinand, a man of about 45, serious but kind. He reviewed all my documents, verified the legal status of the apartment, and explained each step of the process. Mrs. Josephine, everything is in order. The apartment has no debts, no liens. Mr. Benjamin is the sole legitimate owner. We can close the sale next Friday. Are you sure you want to pay in cash? You could get a mortgage if you prefer not to use up so much of your capital, Ferdinand explained. No, I want to pay in cash. I want it to be completely mine. No debts, no mortgage. I've waited my whole life for this moment, I said with conviction. I understand. Then on Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, we'll meet here in my office to sign the deeds. You'll need to bring the payment for $50,000 plus $5,000 for notary fees and taxes. The $5,000 down payment you already made will be deducted from the total, Ferdinand explained, showing me all the papers. $55,000 in total, less than half of my savings. I could do it, and I would. I left the law office feeling stronger than ever. I walked through the city, observing everything with new eyes, the shops, the parks, the buildings. Everything looked different when you knew you were building your own life and not just surviving in someone else's. When I got back to Linda's apartment, I briefly turned on my phone to check messages. Edward had sent only one more, and the tone had completely changed. Mom, I talked to Grace. She's willing to apologize if you do, too. We can forget this whole misunderstanding if you come home today. We miss you. The house isn't the same without you. Please think carefully before you make a mistake you can't reverse. A mistake I can't reverse. As if buying my own home was a mistake. As if reclaiming my dignity was something to regret. As if 20 years of feeling invisible wasn't the real mistake. I didn't reply. I had nothing more to say to him for the moment. The next few days passed in a mix of nerves and excitement. Linda and I continued buying things for my apartment. A small but comfortable sofa we found at a garage sale for $120. A used but excellent condition queen-size bed for $200. A slim bookcase, some lamps, simple curtains. I also went to the bank to arrange everything for the payment. The teller, a young woman named Ramona, was very patient with me as I got the cashier's check for $55,000. Ma'am, this is a considerable amount. Are you sure this is a legitimate transaction? We don't want you to be a victim of fraud, Ramona said with genuine concern. It's not fraud, dear. I'm buying my first home at 68, I replied with pride. Ramona smiled broadly. That's beautiful, ma'am. Congratulations. My grandmother also bought her house at 70 after divorcing my grandfather. She told me they were the best years of her life. Ramona shared as she processed the check. Her words gave me hope. It wasn't too late. It was never too late to start over. On Thursday night, the day before signing the deed, Edward showed up at Linda's building. I don't know how he got the address. He probably found out through an acquaintance or followed some clue. He buzzed the intercom insistently until Linda answered. Who is it? Linda asked in a dry tone. It's Edward, Josephine's son. I need to speak with my mom. I heard his voice through the small speaker. Linda looked at me, asking with her eyes what I wanted to do. I took a deep breath. Let him come up, but you stay here with me. And Linda nodded. Minutes later, Edward was knocking on the apartment door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see him looking so worn out. He had deep dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. His hair was messy. He didn't look like the successful engineer he pretended to be. Mom, he said, and his voice broke a little. Edward, I replied, without moving from the doorway, without inviting him in. Can we talk? He asked, looking inside the apartment where Linda stood with her arms crossed like a guardian. Here's fine, I said. Edward sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Mom, this got out of control. I know Grace and I were wrong. We shouldn't have taken your card without permission. But you didn't have to leave like that, without warning, leaving us worried. Edward began with that tone he used when he wanted to seem reasonable, but was really just trying to manipulate. Edward, I left you a note explaining exactly why I was leaving. It wasn't impulsive. It was necessary, I replied, keeping calm. But Mom, we're family. Families forgive each other. Families solve their problems together, not by running away, Edward said, taking a step closer. Families also respect each other, Edward. And you haven't respected me in years. It's just that I was so used to the mistreatment that I stopped noticing, I said, feeling the words come out with more force than I expected. Mistreatment, Mom? We never mistreated you. We gave you a roof, food, everything you needed. Edward protested, raising his voice. You gave me a room the size of a pantry. You made me feel like every bite of food I ate was a favor. You treated me like a maid and not a mother. And when I saved money from 40 years of work, you tried to steal it, I said. And each word was like releasing a weight I had carried for too long. We weren't going to steal anything. It was just going to be some things for the house, where you also live. It's not stealing, Mom. It's sharing as a family. Edward shouted, losing his composure. $82,000 isn't sharing, Edward. It's stealing. And I never authorized that expense, I replied without raising my voice, which seemed to frustrate him even more. Fine. Okay, I admit it was a lot. Grace got excited seeing all those things on sale, but we can fix this. Come home, and I promise that none of this will ever happen again, Edward said, changing tactics now, with a pleading tone. I'm not coming back, Edward. Tomorrow, I sign the deed to my new apartment. I'm moving this weekend. I've already made my decision, I said, and I saw his face go from pleading to shock. You already bought an apartment? Without consulting me, Mom? That's crazy. What if you got scammed? What if it's a bad deal? I should have checked those things with you. Edward said, almost panicking. I have a notary, a lawyer. Everything is legal and verified. I didn't need your permission, Edward. I'm a 68-year-old adult with full mental capacity. I can make my own decisions, I explained patiently. Edward was silent for a moment, processing what I had just told him. I saw his eyes darting around quickly, calculating, thinking about his next move. And the money. How much do you have left after buying that apartment? He asked. And there it was. The real reason for his visit. He wasn't here for me. He was here for my money. That's none of your business, Edward, I replied firmly. Of course, it's my business. I'm your son, your only family. I have a right to know how you're managing your finances. At your age, you can make errors in judgment. Edward said with that patronizing tone that bothered me so much. At my age, I have more experience and wisdom than you. I've managed my money for 40 years without making mistakes. I'm not going to start now, I said, crossing my arms. Mom, let's be honest. That money is also a little bit mine. I've supported you for 20 years. I've given you a house, food, utilities. That has a value. If we calculated, I probably owe you little to nothing, Edward said. And his words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Linda stepped forward from inside the apartment. Young man, I think it's time for you to leave. You heard your mother. She's made her decision, and you have no right to her money, Linda intervened with a firm voice. You stay out of this, ma'am. This is between my mom and me, Edward replied rudely. This is my house, and I can get involved whenever I please, and I'm going to ask you to leave right now or I'm calling security, Linda said, taking out her phone. Edward looked at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Is this what you want, Mom? To break up our family? To let strangers get between us? He asked, pointing at Linda. Linda is not a stranger. She's been my friend for 40 years. She's been by my side in times when you didn't even exist. And no, Edward, I'm not breaking up the family. The family broke when you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as your ATM, I said, feeling tears threaten to spill. But I held them back. I can't believe you're doing this. Grace was right about you. She said you were selfish, that you only thought about yourself, and I defended you. What a fool I was. Edward said with venom in every word. Those words hurt more than I wanted to admit. But they also confirmed what I already knew. Grace had poisoned my son against me for years, and he had let her. If that's what you think of me, then it's better that I get out of your life. I don't want to be a burden to anyone, I said with a trembling voice. Fine. Perfect. Go to your apartment. Live alone. But don't come running when you get sick or need help. Don't come back when you realize you've made a mistake, Edward said, turning to leave. Edward, I called out, and he stopped without turning around. I love you. I'll always love you. You're my son, but I can no longer live sacrificing my dignity for your comfort. I hope one day you understand that. Edward didn't reply. He just kept walking towards the elevator. I watched him press the button and disappear behind the closing doors. And with those doors, a chapter of my life also closed. Linda hugged me as I finally allowed myself to cry. I cried for the 20 lost years, for the broken relationship with my son, for the family that could have been but never was. But I also cried with relief, because I knew I had made the right decision, even though it hurt. I barely slept that night. I tossed and turned on the sofa bed, replaying the conversation with Edward, questioning if I had been too harsh, wondering if I should have given him another chance. But every time I thought about going back, I remembered the 20 years of small and large humiliations. I remembered the attempted theft. I remembered all the times they made me feel invisible. No, I couldn't go back. For the first time in my life, I had to choose myself. Friday dawned sunny and beautiful, as if the universe was celebrating with me. Linda and I dressed in our best clothes. She insisted on accompanying me to the lawyer's office. This is one of the most important days of your life, Josephine. You're not going to live it alone, Linda said as she put on her cream-colored silk blouse, the one she reserved for special occasions. We arrived at the office 15 minutes early. Mr. Benjamin was already there along with Ferdinand, the lawyer. They both greeted us with smiles. Good morning, Mrs. Josephine. Ready to be a homeowner? Ferdinand asked warmly. More than ready, I replied with a huge smile. The process took almost 2 hours. I had to sign so many papers I lost count: deed certificates, affidavits, receipts. Ferdinand patiently explained each document, making sure I understood exactly what I was signing. When it was time to hand over the $50,000 check, my hand trembled slightly. It was almost everything I had, but I looked at Linda, who was smiling at me with pride, and I remembered why I was doing this. I placed the check on the table. Mr. Benjamin reviewed it, nodded in satisfaction, and Ferdinand officially processed it. Very well, Mrs. Josephine. With this, we complete the transaction. This apartment is now legally yours. Here are the deeds with your name, the keys, and the building documents. Congratulations on your new home, Ferdinand said, handing me a thick envelope with all the papers and a keychain with 3 keys. I took the keys in my hand and held them as if they were the most valuable treasure in the world. And to me, They were. Those keys represented freedom, dignity, independence. They represented the end of a dark chapter and the beginning of something new. Thank you, Ferdinand. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. You don't know what this means to me, I said, my voice breaking with emotion. Believe me, I do, Mrs. Josephine. I've seen many transactions in my life, but few with as much emotional weight as this one. I hope you'll be very happy in your new home, Ferdinand said with sincerity. We left the lawyer's office, and Linda practically screamed with excitement on the street. You did it. You own your own home. At 68, you've taken your life back, she shouted as she hugged me, and we spun around on the sidewalk like two crazy little girls. People passing by looked at us curiously. Some smiled at our joy. An elderly woman stopped and asked what we were celebrating. I just bought my first apartment. I told her with pride. Oh, how wonderful. Congratulations, dear. It's never too late to fulfill your dreams, the woman said with a warm smile before continuing on her way. Linda and I went straight to the apartment. I wanted to see it again, now that it was officially mine. I opened the door with trembling hands, put the key in the lock, turned it, and pushed. The apartment was exactly as I remembered it, empty, smelling clean, filled with light pouring in through the large window. But now it looked different. Now it wasn't just a nice space. It was my space. My home. I walked slowly through every corner, touching the walls, imagining where I would put each piece of furniture, visualizing my life there. The table by the window where I would have coffee every morning. The sofa in front of the TV where I would rest without fear of someone telling me I was in the way. The bed in my room where I would sleep in peace. It's perfect, Josephine. It's absolutely perfect, Linda said with tears in her eyes. Yes, it is, I replied, also crying, but this time from pure happiness. We spent the rest of the day cleaning the apartment from top to bottom, even though it was already quite clean. But I wanted it to be spotless before I brought my things in. Linda brought cleaning supplies, rags, brooms, and we worked together like in the old days when we were young and cleaned other people's houses. On Saturday morning, Linda organized a small army of help. She called her niece Antonia, a strong 30-year-old who worked for a moving company. Antonia arrived with her truck and two friends who helped us move all the furniture we had bought during the week. It was beautiful to see my empty apartment fill up with life. The dining table looked perfect by the window. The sofa fit exactly in the living room. The bed looked majestic in my room with the new sheets Linda had given me. Every object in its place, every space designed for my comfort. Antonia and her friends were incredibly kind. They refused to charge me for the full move. Mrs. Josephine, any friend of my Aunt Linda is a friend of ours. Just pay us for the gas and we're good, Antonia said with a genuine smile. I gave them $100 despite their protests. It was the least I could do for their help and kindness. By noon, the apartment was completely set up. It wasn't luxurious or modern, but it was cozy and functional. The curtains we bought gave it a warm touch. The few photographs I had, now framed and hanging on the walls, gave it personality. My plants on the small balcony brought it to life. Linda insisted on staying to help me organize the kitchen. We arranged the pots, plates, glasses, and cutlery. Every cabinet had its purpose. Every space was optimized. Tomorrow, we'll go to the market and buy food to fill your refrigerator, Linda said as she wiped the shelves before putting the plates away. Linda, you've already done so much for me. I don't know how I'll ever repay you, I said, feeling overwhelmed by her generosity. You're not going to repay me anything. Friends don't get paid. They support each other. Besides, you'd do the same for me, Linda replied, hugging me. She was right. I would, but that didn't make me feel any less grateful. That night, my first night in my own apartment, Linda went home after making sure 1,000 times that I would be okay on my own. I stood in the middle of my living room, looking around, still unable to believe that all of this was mine. I made myself a cup of tea in my kitchen, using my teapot, my cup, my water. I sat in my armchair by my window and looked outside. The park was lit with faint streetlights. Some people were walking their dogs. Others were simply enjoying the cool night. For the first time in 20 years, I felt no anxiety. There was no tension in the air. There was no fear of hearing footsteps approaching with complaints or demands. There was only peace, silence, freedom. I allowed myself to cry again. But these tears were different. They were not of pain or anger. They were of relief, gratitude, and hope. I had managed to get out. I had managed to save myself. Sunday was the most peaceful day I'd had in years. I woke up without an alarm, letting my body rest as much as it needed. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when I finally opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was the ceiling of my own room, in my own house. I got up slowly, without rushing. I made coffee in my kitchen, using the coffee maker I found at a garage sale. The aroma filled the entire apartment and made me smile. I took my cup to the window and sat there for an hour, just looking, thinking, feeling. Linda arrived at noon as she had promised, bringing a huge pot of chicken soup she had made in the morning. "So you'll have food for the whole week." "And I also brought fresh bread from the bakery," Linda said, coming in with her full bags. We had lunch together at my new table, chatting about everything and nothing. She told me about her family, about her plans to visit her daughter next month, about the new series she was watching on TV. Simple, everyday conversations, beautiful in their normality. "Have you heard anything from Edward?" Linda asked cautiously as we washed the dishes. "No, and I don't expect to. He made it very clear that he thought I was selfish for making this decision. He probably needs time to process it. Or maybe he'll never understand. Either way, I can't do anything about it now," I replied, drying a plate. "Does it hurt?" Linda asked, looking at me directly. "A lot. He's my son. It will always hurt. But the pain of losing him is less than the pain of losing myself," I said honestly. Linda nodded with understanding and said nothing more on the subject. There was nothing more to say. The following days were about adapting. I learned the routines of my building, met some neighbors, discovered the nearby shops. There was a market 2 blocks away that sold fresh fruits and vegetables. A bakery 3 blocks away that made the most delicious bread I had ever tasted. A pharmacy on the corner run by a kind lady named Grace. Ironically, but a completely different Grace from the one I knew. I created a simple but satisfying routine. I would wake up early, make coffee, and have breakfast looking at the park. Then I would do my chores at my own pace, without pressure. In the afternoons, I would read or watch TV shows that I chose without having to negotiate with anyone. At night, I would cook for myself, small portions of meals I enjoyed. A week after moving, I received a message from Edward. I hadn't blocked him, although Linda had suggested it. Part of me still hoped that my son would come to his senses. The message said, "Mom, Grace, and I went to the house you left. We need to know if you're coming back to pick anything up or if we can dispose of the things left in your room." Dispose? What a cold word. As if the 20 years of my life in that house could just be disposed of. I replied, "Edward, you can donate or throw away whatever is left. I've already taken everything that was important to me. The old clothes and junk that are left, I don't need." There was no reply after that. 2 weeks later, I was at the market buying vegetables when I saw Grace. She saw me too. For a moment, we just stared at each other from a distance, each one sizing up the other. I expected her to approach me, to say something hurtful, to cause a scene, but she just turned and walked away in the opposite direction. It was strange to feel relief instead of pain. It meant I had really managed to close that chapter. A month after moving, Linda organized a small dinner party at my apartment. She invited her niece Antonia, her cousin Sarah, and 2 other friends from her building. There were 6 of us women of different ages, sharing food, laughter, and stories. Antonia told us about her job at the moving company, all the strange things she had seen, the families she had helped. Sarah shared cooking recipes her grandmother had taught her. Linda's friends talked about their dream trips, places they wanted to see before they were too old. "And you, Josephine, what dreams do you have now that you have your own house?" Antonia asked with genuine curiosity. The question took me by surprise. I had been so focused on surviving, on escaping, on settling down, that I hadn't thought about dreams beyond having my own space. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I think my dream was this, to have my own place. But now that I have it, I guess I can start dreaming about other things." "Well, you have to dream big, Josephine. You're still young. 68 is nothing. My mom is 82 and she just learned to swim, Sarah said enthusiastically. That night after everyone had left, I kept thinking about that question. What did I want to do with the rest of my life? I had my apartment. I had $75,000 in the bank. I had my health. I had time. What would I do with all of that? The answer came a week later. Unexpectedly. I was in the park in front of my building, sitting on a bench, enjoying the afternoon sun, when an elderly woman sat down next to me. She must have been at least 80, but she moved with energy and joy. Beautiful day, isn't it? The woman said with a smile. Beautiful, I replied. Do you live around here? She asked, pointing towards the buildings. Yes, I just moved in a month ago, in that building, second floor, I said, pointing to my window. Oh, that's nice. I live on the other side of the park. I come here every day to walk. The doctors say it's good for the heart, but I come because I like to see the people, see the children play. Watch life go by, the woman said philosophically. We talked for almost an hour. She told me her name was Antonia, that she had been widowed for 10 years, that she had 5 children, all living in different cities. She told me she had learned to live alone, and that this was the happiest time of her life. When I was married, I always had to think about him first. What did he want to eat? What did he want to do? How did he feel? When my children were young, everything was for them. There was never time for me. But now I can do what I want, when I want, how I want, and it's liberating. Antonia explained, her eyes shining. Her words resonated deeply with me. It was exactly what I was beginning to discover. The following months were of pure rediscovery. I enrolled in a knitting class at the community center, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I met a wonderful group of women, all in similar situations, all rediscovering who they were beyond being mothers, wives, or caregivers. I also started walking every morning in the park, half an hour each day. That became my sacred time. I listened to the birds, felt the fresh air, watched the city wake up. It was meditative. Healing. Linda and I developed a routine of having lunch together every Wednesday, alternating between her apartment and mine. Those lunches became the highlight of my week. We cooked together, experimented with new recipes, laughed about everything and nothing. 3 months after I moved, I received another message from Edward. This time it was different. Mom, I know we haven't spoken in months. I know things ended badly. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. Grace and I are having problems. She wants things I can't give her. She's always dissatisfied. Always wants more. And I realized something. She treated you that way, too. As if what you gave was never enough. I think I understand now why you left. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I understand. I read the message several times. Part of me wanted to reply immediately, wanted to run and hug him, wanted to rebuild everything. But another part, the part that had learned to protect myself, urged caution. I showed the message to Linda during our Wednesday lunch. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to reply, but with clear boundaries. He's my son, and I love him, but I can no longer be the mother who sacrifices everything for him. If he wants a relationship with me, it has to be on my terms, I said with a firmness that surprised me. I wrote a careful reply. Edward, I appreciate your message and your honesty. Understanding what happened is the first step. If you want to rebuild our relationship, you're welcome, but it has to be different. I am no longer the mom who lets herself be manipulated or mistreated. I have my own life now, my own space, my own boundaries. If you can respect that, we can start over. I love you, but I love myself more now. Mom. His reply came the next day. I understand, Mom. Could I visit you someday, just to see how you are? What's your new apartment like? Without Grace. Just me. We agreed that he would come the following Sunday. I spent the whole week nervous, obsessively cleaning the apartment, even though it was already spotless, mentally cooking and recooking what I would say to him. On Sunday, he arrived promptly at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When I opened the door, I saw a different Edward, thinner, with more gray hair, with tired but also softer eyes. Hi, Mom, he said with a trembling voice. Hi, son, I replied, and we hugged in the doorway. It was a long, healing hug full of unsaid things. I showed him the apartment. He walked through each space, attentively touching the furniture, looking at the photographs on the walls, observing everything. "It's beautiful, Mom." "It's small but cozy." "It feels like you," Edward said with sincerity. We sat at my table by the window. I served him coffee and cookies I had bought that morning. We talked for hours. Edward told me about his problems with Grace, about how she constantly pressured him for more money, more things, more status. He told me he had started therapy to understand his behavioral patterns. "The therapist made me see that I repeated with Grace the same thing Dad did to you. I let her treat you badly because I wanted to keep the peace in my marriage without realizing I was sacrificing my relationship with you." Edward admitted with tears in his eyes. "Edward, your father and you are two different people. Your father abandoned us. You stayed, albeit in a distorted way. The fact that you recognize it now means you can change," I said, taking his hand across the table. "Can you forgive me someday?" Edward asked, looking at me directly. "I've already forgiven you, son. Forgiveness isn't for you. It's for me, to free myself from resentment. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back to how we were. It means moving forward with healthier boundaries," I explained calmly. Edward nodded, understanding. "Does Grace know you're here?" I asked. "Yes, she didn't like it, but I no longer give her the power to decide over my relationships." "That's another change I'm making," Edward replied with determination. Our relationship after that day was a slow but genuine reconstruction. Edward started visiting me every 2 weeks, always alone, always respectful of my space and my time. He asked about my life, my activities, my friends. He really listened to me, not just waiting for his turn to speak. 6 months later, Edward and Grace divorced. I wasn't surprised. Some relationships are built on toxic foundations that eventually collapse. Edward moved into a small apartment similar to mine and began his own journey of self-discovery. Today, a year after moving into my apartment, I'm sitting in my armchair by the window, watching the sunset over the park. I have $75,000 in the bank untouched. My apartment is fully paid off. My $500 monthly pension covers my basic expenses. I live modestly, but with dignity. Edward comes to visit me every 2 weeks. Our relationship isn't perfect. It probably never will be, but it's honest. He's learning to be a better son, and I'm learning to be a mother with healthy boundaries. Linda is still my rock, my best friend, my chosen family. The women from my knitting class have become my social circle. I have plans to take a small trip next year, something I never allowed myself to do. My life is not extraordinary. I don't have luxuries or spectacular adventures, but I have something I didn't have for 20 years, peace. I have my own space where no one makes me feel like I'm in the way. I have my own money that no one tries to steal. I have my own life that no one controls. Sometimes I look back and wonder what would have happened if I had the courage to leave sooner. But then I remember that every experience, even the painful ones, brought me here, to this moment, to this peace. I'm 69 now. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know that every day I live in this apartment, in my own space, with my own dignity intact, is a day one. It's a day lived for me. And that, after a lifetime of living for others, is more valuable than any amount of money in the bank. So, tell me, have you ever had to reclaim your dignity in a difficult situation? What would you have done in my place? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.